India is in the middle of a 21-day lockdown, and a lot of our viewers have been talking about coping with the emotional, the physical, the mental aspects of being cooped up in a small space. A man who knows a lot about being in splendid isolation for extended periods is NASA astronaut and former commander of the International Space Shuttle, Terry Virts. He joins us live from the United States at this time. Welcome, Commander Virts. I want to start by understanding from you. You've written a lot of tips, a lot of people actively following those. What, according to you, is the best way for people to be trying to cope with a sudden, unexplained period of isolation where they weren't planning for this, suddenly they find themselves in isolation? What do you think they should be doing to try and cope with it?
Well, it's good to be there. Hello, India. Good to talk to you from Houston, Texas. When I was in space, I had been in space for 5 months, and a resupply rocket blew up, and that ended up delaying our replacement, and I ended up getting stuck on the space station for an unknown amount of time. I didn't know how long that was. And in order to handle that problem, that unexpected isolation, the way that I really got through it was with attitude. I knew that it would eventually end, so I tried to make the most of it, and I thought, okay, I have this time, there's nothing I can do about it, so let's make the most of it. And I knew that eventually it would end. So having that mentality and that attitude was what got me through that.
And what are the kind of tips you have for people who are complaining of mental fatigue, just feeling caught up in that same space? When you're in the space shuttle or when you're in a rocket going up, you're in a far smaller space than most people's homes. How did you cope with that? What are the lessons you think you can offer to people who are watching you?
Yeah, so I spent all this week writing a book. I wrote a very short book about 10 tips that I have. There's a couple things. One of them is stay busy. You don't want to just sit around and watch TV the whole time. You have to figure out something to do. There's probably a project around your house that you need to clean something. One of them is be artistic. If you can try and paint something or draw something, or learn to play the guitar or get the camera on your iPhone and practice different types of photography. I think having some type of artistic outlet is a good thing. You have to exercise somehow. If all you do is push-ups in your living room or get outside if you can occasionally, you need to get some exercise. So anyway, I tried to take the 10 tips that were my favorite things, and I put them in this book that will hopefully be coming out in another week or so.
Okay. You also speak about being suddenly with people you haven't been with for as long a period, because you were with a bunch of Russian astronauts, there's an Italian astronaut as well. Now people are with their family members for the most part, but we're reading reports internationally of lawyers saying that divorce rates are going up because husbands and wives are suddenly having to spend hours on end together, and they're simply not used to that. So suddenly it's all blowing up. How do you deal with those aspects?
Yes, we call that too much of a good thing. So there's two aspects to this. Number one, you do need some social contact. You can't just be isolated completely. So you need something either via TV or whatever. You need to see other people. But then you also need time alone. And the most important part of my time in space, and also polar expeditions or long naval expeditions, whenever people are together in close quarters for a long time, they really need some time alone. So each astronaut has their own crew quarters. It's really small. It's like it's just the size of this, but it's your own space. So you can go there to be alone. So if you're there with your husband or your wife for 3 weeks, all day, every day, be sure that you each have your own space. You go there, you keep your stuff there, you're by yourself. Having that personal space is really, really, really important to a space expedition, and also to this crazy situation that we're all in on Earth, COVID.
There's also the mental aspect of having to cope with isolation. You're by yourself. There are all kinds of reports coming about the economy going into a downturn, about companies wanting to retrench people, even though governments are trying that they don't. And that starts playing games with your mind. What are your thoughts and ideas about ensuring that mentally you're on top of the situation?
Yes, so one of the advantages of being in space, the best part about it is looking back at the planet. And I remember looking at Earth and thinking, wow, that planet has been there for a long time, and it's going to be there for a long time in the future. And that really helped me not get too worried about things or too excited about things, because whatever problems we're having are going to be gone. This coronavirus pandemic will be done hopefully this year, maybe next year, but at some point in the near future, it's going to be over with. And so if you can keep that big picture, go on the internet, go on my website, terryvirts.com, or go on the NASA website and just look at pictures of Earth. And that can give you that spiritual perspective that, you know, yes, it's bad. We have to deal with it. It's important. But in the big picture, this will be over and life will go on. That big picture is super important.
One of the things you talk about in your book is managing supplies. At a time where grocery supplies are running short, it's difficult to get hold of supplies. You had to do a lot of supply management with very limited resources in space. So what are your thoughts? Because you don't know what you will get, whether you will get it, when you will get it, and how do you make do with just what you have?
So that's funny. I actually made a funny video this week. I was comparing Earth being stuck in space and being stuck on Earth. It's on my YouTube channel if you want to see it. It's pretty funny. One of the things I talked about was supplies, because when I was in space, we had a Cygnus rocket blow up, we had a Russian Progress rocket blow up, and then a SpaceX Dragon blew up, 3 vehicles in 8 months, and they were all full of supplies. So not only were we suddenly isolated, we were also limited in supplies, which is every human on Earth right now has some limitation. In America, everybody's buying toilet paper. You can't find toilet paper anymore. So one of the things you have to do is figure out what you have, like literally just make a list of all the supplies you have, and then figure out India's under a 3-week lockdown. So what will you need for the next 3 weeks, and be very deliberate about it. You can almost be like a NASA engineer about planning out your supplies. You know, make sure you have the basics. You don't need a lot of food. It's a relatively short amount of time, but just be very disciplined, like an accountant going through your supplies. That's what we had to do on the space station. And once you figure out that you're going to be okay, I think that'll take a lot of the stress out. But this video that I made was pretty funny. Hopefully, if you're bored, look at it on YouTube.
And finally, you write about attitude. You know, what according to you is the best attitude to have when you're stuck? You know you're stuck. Like you, people don't know if it's a 21-day lockdown. Could it potentially be increased? Bill Gates spoke of an 8 to 10-week lockdown, so that period is uncertain. Will it be a complete life coming back to normal? Partially will life come back to normal? So you're dealing with an uncertain period as well. What's the best attitude to get you through?
Well, I think the most important attitude is that really, for the first time ever in human history, every person on Earth has a common enemy. Every person on Earth has that coronavirus as an enemy. So let's beat this thing together. Let's pretend like we are all America and India and China and Russia. We're all in this fight together against the virus. And the way to beat it is just to avoid contact with other people for a few weeks. If everybody on Earth just shut themselves in their house for a couple weeks, the virus would be gone and we could go back to life as normal. So we really need to have that mentality that it's not just an Indian problem or Egyptian problem or whatever. It's a human problem, and let's fight this thing together. If we do that, I think the future is going to be better than it was before. These last few years and decades, there's been a lot of kind of international strife and nation against nation. I'm hopeful that if we all fight the coronavirus together, maybe that the last few years can change and we can look more towards being collaborative and working with each other.
I'll leave it over there. NASA Commander Terry Virts for joining us live from Texas tonight. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on how to make the most of being in splendid isolation. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.